My eyes are all sensitive.
Look at all these.
Much airflow?
It seems less lit.
I couldn't get this row of lights to work.
Oh,
Not sure
you
why.
pretty smart
I had
you are.
every light switch I could. You, by all means, go ahead. Not that one though.
No.
Don't touch that one.
You'll see Terry Austin came through for the horse center. $300,000 for the parking lot released today. In the budget conferee, the House and the Senate around 4 o'clock released their joint budget, which that's great news.
Is that gonna take care of the drainage from the door?
I'm not sure what 300, it only says to pave the parking lot, $300,000 in the first year of the by the budget, of the 2-year budget. Ooh, That's a little bit
I've got
much.
to believe that's only paving, Charles. They're probably not putting anything under.
Is that on a dimmer?
Stormwater.
Yeah, cause that water, you always gotta dodge the water.
Walk away, Chuck.
In mud.
Well, if they pave
Is
it,
it-
you know, again, the water's gonna go somewhere.
Yeah, it's that connection piece.
Oh,
that
I
goes
see
from
them.
the parking
Okay.
lot
Yep.
to the front door to
Oh,
that road that gets
I was
wet.
messing with
Yeah,
the
I've seen it
actual
all, but
lights.
That's all.
We'll see when it's done, right?
It is that time. It is 6 o'clock by Verizon time. I'd like to call this work session to order, and I will call on city manager to lead on.
These are good lights, man.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jen is with us to go through the CIP. We also, of course, went through the first year of that CIP in an earlier meeting. So we're going to go through the final 4 years of it, just go through the projects in general. If there's any questions, we've got time for discussion clearly. So ask away, and I'll let Jen come up and get started here.
Good evening. So first of all, the pages I passed around are replacement pages for the first 3 pages of the CIP. We received the information from the jail, so I was able to update that, and you'll see that on page 2. And our share is looking to be just over $179,000 for FY25. So I guess we can go ahead, and if everybody would want to flip to tab 3, we can look at the projects in store for FY26.
as far as Fund 25,
Mhm.
is the county still moving forward with the gym at the high school?
Last I heard, yes,
Okay,
but I will continue to keep updated on that.
that's good.
So go
Tab 3.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. In FY26, the first item is for the police department, the body worn cameras, which I believe council had directed last fiscal year. We're keeping that here as a placeholder, and only if grant funds are received will we move forward on that. For the fire department, they're looking to,
Didn't the police department get a grant to go with that?
they've applied for one, but I don't think they were notified yet. Okay. Whether or not
So
they
if
received
they get
it,
a grant, this will be affected by, it's not gonna be affected by the grant.
right? And I think that in our last discussion with the chief, there's 2 potential grants. And the federal one, I think, was the one that would potentially pay for most all of the cost.
And we will bring that back to you. That I say we, of course, the new city manager and staff, police chief will bring that back to you. But yeah, there are various grants, and some of them pay a greater or lesser percentage of that cost. And certainly we want to be clear that council's happy with that project, because I know some of you said maybe that's not as important as other priorities. And so we would bring that to you so you could judge whether or not it's worth moving forward with that project based on the funds received.
Proceed.
Next, in the fire department, they are looking to update their station alerting system, basically the bells and alarm system that goes off when a call comes in. We have a couple of bridge projects scheduled for FY 26. And then, of course, the normal sidewalk repairs and street resurfacing that we need to address each year. A few other traffic signals, guardrail improvements. We'd like to continue with some upgrades at the city pool. Central Dispatch is looking to upgrade some of their equipment. And Raro, if they're in the same building, they would like to try to get their building re-sided. It's somewhat falling apart. Again, continuing on to parks and cemeteries. We have some upgrades planned, and the Oak Grove expansion sewer realignment improvements, that is to help improve the quality over at the Spotswood property.
Can we talk about that Lime Kiln Park $175,000? I have no problem personally if we think that in FY 26 citywide, we might do some playground upgrades, but I think it's misleading to people that we truly might spend $175,000 on that on that, where there's only 3 parking spaces for that. And that is more than we spent at the entire Waddell playground. I think it's just misleading to people why we would do that. I don't know why we would do that, but that's just me. There's
Maybe worth eliminating the Lime Kiln Park piece.
definitely,
Yeah, happy to
Just
do.
parks and playground upgrades.
because I know people,
Unless Public Works is advocating for 175,000 at that
Well,
park.
W&L kids continue to do that survey, and I think people are being misled that whatever they're doing is going to come to fruition.
Sure.
But
Yeah, I'll remove reference to Lime Kiln there.
Or just move it up to the line item that just, the second one in that category.
That's 20,000.
Gotcha.
But it does need upgrades, but I agree.
Oh, absolutely.
175,000 sounds a bit over the top for that little park.
Mm-hmm.
That tends to cater to preschoolers, you know, it's, because a lot of people use it while schools are in session and they can't use the Waddell Park.
If they're not at kids'
It's a
place.
popular
Yeah,
gathering
right.
place, during the middle of the day for people that live in that area to come over and have a picnic lunch and
Mhm.
and watch, not with children, but although I go by and see children as well that aren't in school that are playing in there.
Absolutely needs upgrades. I just don't think we should spend more on that than we did at Waddell.
Yeah, 175 is
you know,
tough, but
A quarter of an acre playground.
Right.
And there's, like I said, like two or three parking spots for that park.
so we're talking about putting new mulch in.
I think replacing some of the equipment, but not building a structure the size at Waddell
Yeah,
in that
but
area.
175 got your attention.
Yeah, but it's been there for a couple of years and I've been asking about it. Yeah.
Can I back up to the fire department?
Yes.
The 216,000 for a new alert system, is the old alert system bad?
It's operational, but there are some parts of the building where I understand from the chief that it's difficult to hear the call over the loudspeaker.
So it's nothing that 216 wouldn't take care of. That's being facetious.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And I'm thinking, I've been in a building when an alarm goes off and it's
I've always heard it.
noisy out
It
there.
is, yes.
And that kind of stuff there.
Mm.
And so the justification is because of a couple areas of the building, 216,000 to fix it.
Jim, can you speak to this, or should we have the chief join us at a future meeting?
We could certainly have the chief there. I did ask him about that, and he said the same thing that Jen mentioned, is that there are times when they do not hear the alarm in certain areas of the building. So, that delays them. I didn't question how good their hearing was, but I tended to believe him. He wouldn't mention it if there wasn't a case that was true.
Well, I appreciate that there are areas that might be subject to this question. So similar to the 175 for the lime kiln, 216 for an alert system seems seems a bit much for an alert system that, I was drowned out when I was out there one day with that.
We can have it checked and I can have Ty come and explain to you, or I can have him explain to me why it is $216,000.
Yeah, I would appreciate that.
Sure, absolutely.
I had a question about the body worn cameras. Does the 110,000 include any administrative fees for the Commonwealth Attorney's Office or anything of that
It
nature?
does not,
Okay.
because this is capital, of course, so you don't have any personnel costs or anything of that nature. So there would be additional costs of that nature, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
And of course, we have cameras in the cars. Do our police officers currently have microphones? Like recording devices, verbal?
I've not heard of anything that they're wearing.
They do. I've asked the same question,
They do. Oh,
but
they do,
it doesn't
okay.
have distance associated with it. They've got to be close. They can't go too far from their car.
But they do have recording devices on, because before, when we've had police chiefs before, when we've asked about cameras, and they're like, oh, our cameras in the car are very good, and they are whatever we wear that picks up our voice is very good also. But
Within the distance, they've got to be close enough.
correct.
And just while we're talking about the two chiefs, they will both be here at our March 14th work session, along with Patrick Madigan, to discuss their budgets and any questions you may have. And then just to go back to the fire station real quick, I knew that Chief Dickerson had provided us with quite a lengthy narrative explaining why it was needed. And I think the main point was that when it was installed and built in 2006, it hasn't been updated since then, and it was initially for a volunteer fire department. So it's no longer adequate. But he'll be here next week. And then you'll notice we didn't schedule any stormwater projects for FY25. We picked some of those back up again in FY26 with the thought that as we possibly begin to implement the stormwater fund fees, that could help offset those projects. Any other thoughts on FY26? FY27, our biggest projects we're looking at would be the bridge replacement at Welch Park Road. And then annual street resurfacing, and then planned improvements at Rockbridge County High School. Totaling our share looks like it's going to be about 750,000.
This is tab 4.
Yes, I'm sorry, tab 4. Anything on FY27?
Jen, I guess on 26 and for 27, the financing item. I'm just curious how those will work in. Got 1.5 and 2 in 26, and I think 2 million, 2.8 in 27.
Yes, so in 27, we would likely try to piggyback on with whatever Rockbridge County does for the school portion.
Okay.
And then in order to do the $1.6 million bridge project, we could either use fund balance or look to do a financing for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so
But in FY26, since we
FY26.
are told that the county is continuing forward on that gym, they're going to finance that next fiscal year, and we're going to join in on that.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
I just didn't know they had that joint meeting last week. If anyone attended from our school board, the joint meeting of the county board of supervisors and their school board at Effinger.
I'll follow up with our school board.
Because hopefully we have a definitive answer soon if that gym is being built next year.
Mhm.
This is another gym on the existing RCHS property.
Yes, they approved the CIP in October or November 2023. And so hopefully they're have a plan or to pin them down.
Shall we move on to FY 28? Number 5. In comparison, this looks like an inexpensive year for us. With the Rebel Ridge Road bridge repairs.
Well, the sewer money and the water money. And
Well, yes, you're exactly right. Any questions on FY 28?
I would just, for everyone here, as far as $135,000 for backstop replacement, I don't anticipate that it would cost that. I also don't anticipate that we will be waiting until FY 28 to do that. There was some significant failure at Fox Field. That's the field closest to the pool parking lot. That we think one of the poles was damaged with a freeze thaw all winter. I think Public Works is looking at it pretty closely right now and doing a temporary fix, but I have a feeling that it will need fixed more permanently sooner rather than later. And I just don't think that $135,000, the cost of a small house, is what it will cost to replace a backstop at Fox Field.
Do you recall what the cost of the backstop?
At the annex, we have that turtle, that temporary one, that was a couple thousand, a few $1,000s that had to be put together, and it's stored at Public Works during the off season.
Right.
So
Less than 10,000?
yes, I believe it was less than 10,000. Yeah, but that's again, kind of a temporary one.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, we should probably move this up in CIP. It shouldn't be, we're not going to do it 4 years. We're going to do it next year, perhaps.
I think so. And of course, I'm not sure what the funding arrangement will be with Buena Vista and the county, if it's considered a expensive RARO, if there's a cost share. That's usually the capital committee, which is the city managers and the city and the, Spencer that deal with that.
Right.
But I don't think in FY 28, we're going to be spending $135,000 on 2 backstops at Brubaker.
do you have a sense of how gold plated this backstop is?
I think that they got a number and they shared it with the city as a place, just to say heads up, this is coming, but I don't think that it's very accurate.
More of a placeholder.
A placeholder, very much so. Yeah.
Would you like to see that in FY 25?
I think it's going to be I'll let Patrick and his team,
Okay.
when they're looking at the repairs, kind of assess it.
Well, Raro is going to do something regardless of who pays for it. I mean, my perception, I guess what I've heard and understand from Raro's position, those need to be replaced in 25.
Yes.
So I would say, unless there's an objection, let's move it to 25. And we'll see when it gets done and what it actually ends up costing, but there's no need to keep it, continue to be on 28.
How many backstops is it? You said you talked about the one at Fox?
It's the two, the one at Brubaker
Oh, okay.
and the one at Fox. So it's in that complex.
Mm-hmm.
And when do y'all plan on putting lights on the annex? Just kidding.
Yeah.
To have a real backstop.
See who's paying attention. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. Moving on to tab 6, our last year in the general fund CIP. And here we are looking for, our big project would be the high school building upgrades. Currently, our cost is anticipated to be around 4.3 million, but we'll be able to refine that number as it comes closer. Okay. So if we could move to tab 8 and look at the utility fund capital projects. We don't have a lot happening here, but it's expensive. The Jackson Avenue area upgrades. We have now split into several phases because the construction has come in just much higher than originally anticipated. And we also had the thought to maybe do the projects every other year to try to limit disruptions to the citizens living in that neighborhood.
Say that last part again.
Doing the phases every other year
Uh-huh,
to try to limit interruptions to the citizens,
gotcha.
traffic, rerouting and all that good stuff.
I hope it includes paving the section that's done each time, each year.
Right, that's part of what I was thinking, depending upon. It's a nice idea, but it seems like get in and tear it up and endure the pain and suffering as downtown and Diamond Hill all have. I mean, money's another circumstance as well as finding the workers to do it, but just an observation, not non-budget related.
But I mean, we're happy to make adjustments if council feels that's not the right choice.
We had some questions about the size of the project, over almost $13 million. So we wanted to phase it, which is typically what we did in the past. But we didn't, initially we were talking about, a portion of that in every fiscal year, which would mean if I live around the block on Jackson or Lee or whatever, first they're a block and a half north of me, then they're a block and a half east of me, and next year they're a block and a half west of me. And no matter what I do for 4 years, I've got to put up with that construction within 4 blocks of home. And so we thought we'd do it every 2 years. One, we don't have to borrow money then every year or find some type of financial arrangement every year. And two, we can give you a break and do a bigger area. And then, as you say, paving's cheaper. Instead of trying to pave every year, you do a good sized project every other year and you pave every other year. And then you get a little bit of respite in that area. And we can take on projects, of course, across the city and other places too. Just trying to logically look at how we satisfy the paving, the disruption to people's lifestyle, the financing, et cetera. We certainly could do it all at once.
How much more would it cost to pave every other year to like repave it? Versus is it a large cost or?
You really don't know. We get a general paving contract for the entire city. So we wouldn't just be paving the area where we put the water and sewer in any given year. And that's just something we bid out every year. So I really couldn't tell you that if we did it over 4 years, it would be X number of dollars more expensive. It's going to depend on the price of asphalt. If the contractors are happy, have enough work, or they're a little hungry and they want a little more work. So couldn't tell you that from year to year.
So when a paving, just to add on to that, when a paving contractor bids a job, they look at how many feet they got to put paving down and they crank up a number. So what would that number be? Maybe that's a question to ask.
Well, again, we would bid all of our paving for the entire year. So they would know what the number is for the entire year, but it would not just be 5 blocks on Jackson and 4 blocks on White Street.
Right.
It might be 27 blocks in the entire city.
Right. But those guys know that they price it out per foot when they do the bids.
Well, they do a square foot or a square
It's the
square
least of our
yard.
worries with that
Yeah,
project.
right.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, what we're talking about is 3 to 5 years of disruptions of, remember, everyone dropping their kids off at 8 o'clock and picking them up at 2:45, that you're messing with traffic significantly for years.
That's true, but when you extend it out, you're also, you're giving people a break every other year, but then it's kind of long over a period of time.
Again, assuming that work doesn't bleed over. Again, I'm not a contractor. I don't know if people want to get mobilized, get in, get the job done, bank the X number of $1 million and move on and be ready to do another project. I don't know how that truly works. If Randy Hofstadter's company, which has done a good job on projects in Lexington, if they're like, gosh, we don't know what we're doing in FY29, so but if you said you were doing this in 26 and 27, we'll get it all done. I don't know. It's a lot.
I yield to our Public Works Director
Yep.
and his relationships and understanding those.
Yeah.
Good call. If I understand properly, I can get Patrick to work up something to do the entire project in 1 year. I thought what I heard you say is shorten the time span. So that'd be an option. I don't know that we can tell you that, again, any pricing differential today because you're judging today against 3 or 4 years from now. Project scope is different, a larger project, you're right, you're going to get a better bid seemingly. But does that mean again that the prices are going to be cheaper today, or will we find out they're cheaper 3 years from now?
Is,
But we can bring you something back.
is the dollar amount that's shown in these, 3 different years, 4 different columns there, the 3 years, gonna be borrowed money?
Yes.
All of it.
Yeah. Well,
Most of it.
yeah. I mean, you don't go to borrow, you don't do a $3 million project and borrow 2.8 million. You know, there's no, if, and part of that will depend on the cost of money. You know, if we're still getting good interest rates and borrowing is, you know, relatively speaking, a little cheaper, which is the case today, we'll probably borrow most of that. If the interest rates go through the roof, maybe somebody will come back to you at that time and say, you know what, we'd recommend, even at that time, folding 2 years of the projects into 1 year, $7 million project, $3 million cash and $4 million borrowing. That'll be somebody to make that decision in the future based on cost of money. At least at that factor.
But you're anticipating all of it is borrowed.
Yes.
I guess an item I would point out, what I heard you say is that it was every other year to alleviate some of the stress on the neighborhood. I'm not sure that it would be perceived that way, extending the project over 4 years as opposed to 1.5 years or whatever. But I would say whatever is the most logical for construction and cost, looking at a project, get in, get it done, and let people get back to their lives. I think if you say we're doing it so we don't disrupt you, we give you a year off, I'm not sure people will look forward to the following year, but just an observation on selling this and educating the public on the need. I know everybody wants to see the sewer go when they flush.
Absolutely. Okay, the only other project we have scheduled in the utility fund CIP at this moment is the just the annual water meter replacements that need to be done throughout the city.
Very good.
Those meters still running around $1,000 a meter?
I will have to double check on that. I don't recall. Any other questions on the utility fund CIP?
Look forward to the day that perhaps we can achieve not budgeting I&I.
Yes. That would be nice.
Going to the utility fund budget. Since we've got another half hour, we're going to go into the utility fund budget itself. Obviously, it's a very small component of our entire budget, so I think we can get through that in a half hour. Jen will tell you what page that's on.
The utility fund detailed information begins for us on page 23 in the binder. Now, within this budget, I am proposing an 8% rate increase on water and wastewater. That is driven by the increase that we believe MSA will pass on to the city. Let me just pull that out. We received some updated numbers from the MSA yesterday. I don't believe that they're final yet. They're going to have their rate workshop on Tuesday, but right now they're proposing an increase to the city of 8.3% on water and 4.2% on wastewater. The wastewater increase that was shared with us yesterday is slightly lower than what I had used in budgeting. So it's possible we could have a lower increase, but I need to work through those numbers again.
Right now, again, those numbers that you just mentioned don't include any of this new debt that we've been talking about for a long time. This is just strictly current operating expenses there.
Mhm.
And the meeting we had, MSA had with Davenport, we're looking at the overall debt structure going out 10 years. And the projection for paying for that debt was in the neighborhood of 8+% per year compound each of the years. And so go back and figure back in your old econ days, how long does it take money to double? 8% doubles in roughly 9 years, kind of stuff. And so that is going to be on top of these once that debt starts kicking in. So just want to put that out there.
We've had Davenport come in. They've been working, as you say, with MSA, and we have, similarly as we did in the general fund, a schedule of what type of rates are going to be required over a 10-year period to support not only our operations, but our capital costs and the MSA capital costs. And they're not quite in that 8% range. They're between 6 and 8% annually. But we will present that to you at a future meeting. Davenport will come in probably the 21st of this month. We're scheduled for another work session a week from tonight, and then probably in 2 weeks when we have the other council meeting, we'll have Davenport come in and do a presentation probably for that full hour before the meeting about what we can expect or what you can expect in the utility funds when it comes to our cost, what the rates may need to be over time to support the MSA projects, our projects, Jackson Avenue, et cetera, and our operating costs. They've layered one on top of the other, so you can see that very clearly.
And also figuring in the same MSA discussion, figuring in the amount that the localities might be asked to subsidize to kind of help the rates not skyrocket in there to do that. So there's a little bit of give and take on that. And so it's all to be discussed.
Okay, so looking at the utility fund revenues, again on page 23, you'll recall that beginning in FY 24, we started allocating the utility fund their interest for money that's sitting in the LGIP. So we didn't budget for it, but we are actively doing it. And so we're expecting it to be around 245,000 next year. And just for purposes of the budget, not exactly knowing where interest rates are going, I used 4.5% on our balance to just kind of project out what we might expect. Currently, the LGIP money, we're earning just over 5.5%. Any questions on the revenue side? Okay.
I just have an observation in this category, and it's not a major amount of money, the late payment penalties. This is money that we've been collecting typically, and they're roughly 3,000 water meters, 3,000 accounts, 2,600, 3,000.
That sounds right. In that neighborhood,
range.
sure.
So this, just looking at these numbers there, that's like $10 per meter for every account
Right.
in there to do that. And so it's at some point, and I'll say I paid $10 one time myself. So got my 10 in there. So it's quite a bit though. It happens.
It is. Yes.
I mean, it's 33,000.
Yeah, every month shut off notices go out and then we end up collecting penalties.
Jen, I know we're talking about a small piece of it and an allocation for 25. But unless council has an objection, I'd much rather see us do 4% than 4.5%.
Okay.
Purely conservative budgeting.
I'm good with that.
Fed said higher, longer, but
Mhm.
short-term interest rates right now are around 5%. When they do get reduced, whether it's 25 or 26, time will tell. I just hate for us to be in a budget deficit on interest that we didn't collect.
Perfect. And so by extension, I did use that same number on the general fund. Okay, I'll move that to 4% as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we flip the page 24, looking at the expenses, you'll notice down, well, let me start at the top rather, I apologize. Under administration, you'll see we have a 21% increase. Now, what that is it's really a change in budgeting, not so much in what we're actually doing. Previously, Scott Dameron, our number 2 at Public Works, we were allocating his salary for budget purposes through all the various Public Works departments. When in practice, what's been happening is he's always charged it half to the utility fund and half to Public Works. So you're seeing a catch up here where now we're in budget, we're budgeting half of his salary. We also have a 5% increase at the moment factored in for city staff, which is also adding to the increase. And then lastly, the health insurance rates, I budgeted at 15%, a 15% increase. We received our information a couple weeks ago and it's actually only 11%. So we'll potentially see some savings there. I'm just waiting and working with the HR director to finalize the split between staff and the city. And then I can get all those numbers updated for you.
Just so we're using the right term, we're not going to see any savings in the health cost. The increase won't be as high.
Thank you.
Don't want to give you false hope.
Okay. Coming down, you'll see that water distribution as well as wastewater collections, we're budgeting a lower number this year. And historically, the annual like thousands of gallons that we've budgeted has been much higher than what we see in actuality. So for this year, I tried to bring the numbers closer in line with what we typically see. So we won't over budget our expenses and need to increase rates higher than normal.
So the water storage. The water distribution.
Yes, so the water tank is in need of repainting. And so I believe that is the main driver of that increase there. And I know $150,000, that's an expensive painting job. So I will follow up with Patrick and he will enlighten us.
Just ask that we continue to get a good return on our investment of the I&I reduction projects. Obviously $1 million is a lot of money, especially when we think that we might be spending 3.4 on Jackson Avenue Phase 1. I feel like the MSA is going to get their money. They're going to charge us if we are sending less water to the MSA for them to treat. They're still going to charge us. They're going to make it up.
There are some small efficiencies that I believe we would gain when it comes to our share of the costs paid by the city versus the county PSA. The other factor to keep carefully in mind is the fact that relining is a much cheaper way of replacing the pipe in the ground than digging it up and putting in new pipe. And relining, from what I've gathered, gives us between 40 and 60 more years of that pipe in the ground at a fraction of the cost. I mean, again, look at the Jackson Avenue project, 13 million, let's just say half of that's water line, $6 million. For $1 million, you can accomplish almost what you're doing with that 6 million. If you don't let the pipes get too old, once they get to a certain point, the settling, the cracking, the root intrusions, etc., you can't reline it because there's too many obstacles. So you've got to choose to do it at a certain point or you're not doing it at all.
Got it. No, I just wanted to ask,
Mhm.
do we know where that relining would happen with that
We're still looking at Providence Hill. Most of that would be in the west side gosh, my mind's not going now. Woods Creek watershed, if you will. Okay.
And this is all being defined with that camera that travels inside the lines.
Right. You look at the line itself to determine, is it in a condition that it can be relined and provide any benefit, you know? Otherwise, if it's already cracked or broken too much, you just don't reline it. You replace that section of the pipe, but only that section.
And this would be in phase 2 of the plans.
This is separate from Jackson Avenue.
No, it's the Providence Hill phase
Phase
2.
2.
Oh,
Phase 2 of
correct.
Providence Hill, yes.
And the city manager and I also discussed this afternoon that we may not keep 1 million budgeted in there based on the fact that the contractor that Public Works has been using has been slow to mobilize. They've gone through 3 or 4 project managers, and the relining can't be done in the winter months because it's too cold. So I followed up with Patrick this afternoon, and he said that in the next couple of weeks, they should give him a schedule for what they can complete this fiscal year. We still have about 600,000 of the million that we budgeted for this year that's not yet spent. So depending on what they can do, we may just choose to roll that forward and not budget another million next year. And then, so just one last point that could affect the rates for our citizens. That 1 million that you're seeing under I&I reduction projects, there had been talk previously that we could potentially use money that was freed up in the general fund from the ARPA dollars that we were able to realize. So if that were the case, we could potentially, if council wanted to, move 1 million from the general fund to the utility fund, and then it wouldn't have to come out of operating revenues.
We've got to pay for it either way. On one hand, we have money in hand in the general fund. On the other hand, it's not in the utility fund, and it keeps your rates from going up as high. And if you're going to do the work, you pay for it in the utility fund, the rates will go up. So that's, you know, one of the questions that you have to face, or we all have to face. There is a point when it becomes uncomfortable. So $1 million, either you don't do the I&I, which has some downsides financially and operationally, or you do it and you maybe take money out of the general fund.
But if that, let's just say $1 million is left in the general fund, when you remove it from, well, let's just say when it is removed from the general fund, you now make up those general fund dollars with property tax dollars. And so that, am I right? Eventually that $1 million goes away. And so then only property owners that pay property taxes would help pay for it. And one of the things about our utility fund is the ratepayers, which includes people that don't pay property taxes, help cover our utility funds.
It's a good point.
So taking
think
money from the general fund would be subsidizing, if you will, those who don't pay property taxes.
Over time, that's a possibility. Yes, it depends on how you use your money in the general fund over time.
Well, they're tax exempt to clarify, but.
I want to add, and not argumentatively in any way, but the money that we received from ARPA, that $9 million, we were able to recognize that by using it to pay staff salaries. So, I mean, you could think of it that way. That I get your point about the tax exempt entities, but we have this $9 million that we otherwise would have used on salaries, and now we just have it sitting around. So we could potentially use that for the utility fund, if you all wanted to.
My personal thought would be that those are general fund dollars. That's. I feel like
That's property tax revenue.
Well, not the ARPA money, though. I see the
No,
point
but it-
Jen's making, and
property
I do
tax-
agree with what you're
property
saying. in
tax
general,
dollars
but-
pays the salaries. We were fortunate, we got ARPA dollars to pay the salaries. So the money that we saved can be used for something else within the general fund. It's a philosophy. If we want to subsidize the water rates that are paid by folks that, on the backs of people that pay property taxes and don't have tax exempt property, then that's, let's just be upfront about that.
One of the criteria that I've learned about for this MSA situation and the borrowing money from different sources is that there's an evaluation that includes participation from the customers in the I&I reduction, that there's an argument for not spending as much capital dollars at the MSA plant if you can reduce I&I. And so there is an argument for spending that money for I&I reduction as a way for MSA to not have to borrow as much to put in the infrastructure to handle the larger flows. And so one of those categories for MSA, when we listened to the information at the Horse Center, I think that was in the category of the $40 million that part of that would be this I&I reduction. So it's linked to this, but it's not necessarily one-to-one linked to in there, but it's a consideration.
I would say philosophically, I'd go out on a limb and say everyone concurs with the statement that you made in subsidizing the utility fund, David. The great thing is where there are grants or pennies from the feds that get used for different projects, we got options, which is the how we choose to use it. But your point is very, very I concur, and I think everyone on council occurs with the utility fund needs to stand on its own and is structured with the higher, there is no volume discount. There's a volume penalty. And our tax exempt friends, for the most part, incur that penalty, if you want to perceive it that way, or those of us that turn the spigot off and don't use much water reap the benefits of it. But the ARPA money being a grant from the federal government is not property taxes, which I think is the city manager's point. But if we can get some grants and especially at the MSA with some of that work and get some federal dollars, all the better. Proceed, Jen.
Okay, so if we glance over at page 25, we can just see a more detailed breakdown of the expenses within the utility fund. And there's where you can see the wages and the health insurance increases that I had mentioned.
Jen, I may be missing something, but I'm curious, which is always dangerous. Under capital projects, water meter replacement, budgeted in 24, 125,000. And this year we've only requested 25,000. I wasn't sure.
We discussed that with Patrick when we were going through the budget, and we're in a better spot replacing the water meters than we initially thought. We originally thought we were gonna have to do at least 100,000 each year. But in ordering, I guess he got some bulk discounts, but
Okay.
and also some of the meters just weren't that bad.
Great, thank you.
Why did professional services go up so much?
I was just looking at that myself. I know I discussed it with Patrick, and I don't recall at this moment, but I will find out for us. Yeah, I apologize. I'll get back with everyone tomorrow on that one.
Thank you.
I hazard a guess it has to do with the design work for the system, the water and sewer line replacements. I just,
That was
Yeah.
my thought too, but yeah.
I'll just hazard that guess. So, obviously we get a big project of it, $12, $14 million. You get a fee for your design and engineering. We may be able to recover that into the project by financing, but it's still on the books right now.
Jen, let's go in about another 2 minutes.
The one other note on the utility fund is just their equipment replacement. They had a request for just a small piece of equipment $17,000, which is an attachment for their skid steer. And I apologize, one last thing. I just wanted council to be aware that with the proposed 8% increase, we're looking at our FY 25 minimum bill to go up to $43.74. It's currently at $40.88. And that's for the inside city limits. And the minimum bill for outside city limits going up from $55.20 to $59.06. And I will, I'll refine those numbers after I attend the MSA meeting on Tuesday.
Great. Members of council have any other questions?
For the
regarding-
14th, will we have any representative from the school regarding their budget?
I hadn't invited anyone to attend, but
I just, again, I know Frank wants to kind of wind it down, but just based on what came out today, just not knowing if our schools based their budget on the governor's budget, or if they assumed what came out today was going to be happen, because there's a lot more K-12, funding. And then, of course, if someone would just 17% increase at the high school, just that jumps out, but.
and
So we can certainly do that. We do have a joint meeting, of course, with the schools on the 11th of April. So maybe that's a little late for that discussion on budget. So we'll have somebody here.
Because I think it would also shed light on if the high school's going to do a gym next year, because we're ready to spend $930,000 for our share. But if that's not happening, it'd be great to be aware of that.
We'll contact the schools.
What time are we meeting next Thursday? Planning Commission is not meeting, so this room will be available earlier.
I think we were planning to meet at City Hall. Is that, or had we,
Yes, we're free at City Hall and we can meet as early as 5:30. Sometimes you want to meet a little earlier, sometimes some of you later. So that's open to what you want to instruct us tonight.
check your calendars if it's not objection for staff's benefit, 5 or 5:30 kickoff, I think would be preferable.
Of course, the earlier we start, the longer we can stay.
and Jim and I are there all day. 8, 9, make a day of it.
I'd like, kind of like 5, get it early, eat dinner later.
Sure. Anybody have an objection to 5 o'clock?
Scheduled.
On the 14th.
14th, correct, yeah. 5 PM on the 14th, second floor conference room in City Hall. Very good. Anything else come before regarding the budget where we are at this point? Hearing none, we will adjourn the work session. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Our council meeting will start promptly at 7. We've been in a work session, so you haven't missed anything relative to the meeting. And we'll look forward to kicking off here in a few minutes. Thank you.
people with skin in the game.
Yeah, it's got a payment schedule. Principal and interest. Yeah. I think that's what it
So,
All this stuff. Since 1991.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the March 7th edition of the Lexington City Council. Glad you all are here, and welcome to the Washington Lee journalism class. If you have questions or concerns or ideas to share with us, all of us are on the city website. There are emails and phone numbers. So glad to answer any questions you may have or be interviewed at the end of the meeting if you'd like. And before we get started, if there's anyone who would like to address council this evening during our citizens' remarks and comments, I invite you to sign up over here on the sheet. And otherwise, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And our first item of business, if you all will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item is consideration of the agenda. I'm not aware of any changes or corrections or additions. And unless there's an objection from council, we will approve the agenda as presented. It is approved. Next item, no proclamations this evening. I'll work on that for the next meeting. And have presentations, and I'd like to invite Eric Wilson to come forward with a minute in history. I'll let you make introductions.
Well, try to get the mic right here. Joining tonight, Allison Bell, professor of anthropology from Washington and Lee, and in absentia, Vice Mayor Alexander, who is also on the planning team of this group. So we hope she's watching in one way or another. She's certainly been a key figure in moving this along. On Sunday, I hope you all have seen in the newspaper, you can read in a deeper dive on that. It's going to be a new chapter in a longer journey that the city's had a big part of. There's a history element to it about discovering people who may have lived here in the 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries. But the journey is also about how community groups together work together and take steps to provide meaningful community experiences, knowledge, and connection. So we're just going to sketch that, both looking forward to Sunday at 3 p.m. at the Lilburn Downing Community Center. And we're grateful for the city and city schools for hosting that. Again, to see some of the ways since the last time that actually Allison, where's Allison, here presented with Ted Delaney in 2019. He'll be with us in spirit, certainly still a guiding figure here. But with that, I will let Allison start walking us through the slides.
Welcome, Allison.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us, and thank you, Eric. You might remember in 2008, with construction of the new Rockbridge County Courthouse, there was news of human remains being found in the back of it, in the area where the parking garage was being constructed. Excavation was temporarily halted. Forensic anthropologists from Radford University's Forensic Science Institute were called in, and they excavated the remains and identified them as belonging to a young woman between the ages of 19 and 23 years. They identified her as African-American and identified her on the the form, they called her Ancient Jane, and that is simply a custom in this industry where Jane means a Jane Doe and ancient means this is not a recent homicide. So so this was meant to say this, to acknowledge that this was a historic burial. This burial was found, as I said, near in construction of the garage. There is a bank here, in historic maps. It's called vacant sloping ground. So it was sort of on the edge of town going down towards a creek. We think of it, it might have been something like a potter's field for burial of people, who, for whatever reason, would not be going to a more established cemetery. This bank is covered in periwinkle. You might be able to see these small purple flowers in the bottom right. That's a very common cover for graveyards, for cemeteries, a ground cover. So this was where she was buried approximately, and we don't know if she was alone there or if there might have been other people buried there at one time, or if they are still human remains in that area. We just don't know. She had a number of dental caries, which could be a result of poor nutrition. But we don't know the cause of her death. This is what the area would have looked like further back this is an early 20th century photo. The barn is approximately where the courthouse is now. And so this might have been more like what that area looked like in generations past when she would have been there. It took us a number of years to get her remains returned from Radford, simply for logistical reasons. In 2019, Lexington police officers went to Radford, received custody of Miss Jane, as we now call her, in an effort to be more respectful and in keeping with tradition instead of Ancient Jane. So the preferred term for most people now is Miss Jane. In 2019, in May, Erin Schwartz, who was a 2012 graduate of Washington and Lee, is an anthropologist, and she oversaw the placement of the skeletal remains in a coffin, assisted here by Professor Ted Delaney and Maria Quillen. This is at Randolph Street Methodist Church, and Miss Quillen was a member there. She was laid out in proper anatomical order in a coffin that was handcrafted by local citizens, made of white and red oak that had also grown locally. The people in attendance wrapped her, put cushioning around her, and then secured the coffin. And here's Professor Delaney and Marilyn Alexander. The officials brought her, so we had pallbearers from VMI, Washington and Lee, City of Lexington, County of Rockbridge, and they brought her out at Lexington Police Department on a caisson that took her to the cemetery. And this is Evergreen Cemetery, traditionally African-American since about 1880. And she was buried underneath a blanket of flowers that people had cut and brought from their yards, again, in keeping with tradition. Ted Delaney didn't really agree with calling her Miss Jane. He said we don't know who she is. And so the choice for the headstone was unknown African-American woman who died circa 1800s, exhumed during construction of Rockbridge County Courthouse in 2008, reinterred May 19th, 2019. We did keep 2 loose teeth out of the coffin. One is still at Washington and Lee, pending in the eventuality, in the certainty that there will be different and better methods of DNA research in the future. And we sent 1 tooth to the University of California at Santa Cruz's paleogenomics laboratory, and just got the preliminary results from them in December.
So I'll just wrap by teasing what you can find. I won't ask you all to interpret this map, but they're striking. This is what happens when we can bridge science and history and community enterprise. They've run DNA analysis, and the results were surprising. They were different than what we found. Chiefly the fact that the DNA genome is 100% African. There's no European or Native American admixture in there, which effectively moves the chronology likely that she lived here earlier, among other things. So the scientists will be able to explain this, some of the different kinds of ethnic groups in this region, but you can see clearly the heat map hit points here on the west coast of Africa. And in this one, even without making out the details from West African coast to Virginia on the left, the predominant elements of her genome, the green ones, they derive from what's now Southwest Nigeria, particularly the Yoruba and the Asan peoples. So this provides potentially a different way of talking about heritage in our county, particularly in the earliest years. We now think this could be someone who lived here in that first generation right after Rockbridge was founded. So there are new steps ahead, and the ending of Sunday's program will be talking with the community about what people are interested in learning more about. Can the scientists help steer us there? What kinds of civic projects might we want to continue in the spirit that you have all already helped to do? So thank you very much. We hope to see you Sunday at 3.
3 o'clock Sunday at the Liburn Downing Community Center. Thank you both for being here, and wow, interesting to learn more about our neighbors and those that came before us. So thank you.
We'll say, I'm not sure if we said the scientists will be zooming in on
Sunday.
So you can kind of get a lot of what we said. They can actually explain those maps to you, and they're great about it. They've not done a community project like this. They're usually very tied to their lab, so they're really leaning in, and we're glad for their accommodation. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Allison. Have a great night, and many thanks for your work on in our community. Next item on our agenda is introduction of Virginia Horse Center CEO, Steve Shank. And I hope you have just as impressive slideshow, PowerPoint for your introduction. Welcome, Glenn Petty.
Well, talking about slideshows, several of you were out at the BMX, that we just got a PowerPoint, 9 pages yesterday. On the second page, all of you guys that were in attendance have a very prominent picture.
Fantastic.
And if Jim has a copy, if you can share it with council. But we are told about BMX, it was the largest attended BMX in the United States that they've had, and it's right here in Lexington, Virginia. And I'm remembering from the PowerPoint, it's either 45 or 46 states. Very impressive numbers, and I look forward to your getting that. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce Steve Shank, my successor. My last day is tomorrow. His first day is March 27th. And Steve has spent the week with me. I started out, it was the Steve Shank introductory tour, and then I realized after we got into it, it's the Glenn Petty farewell tour. But I'm sad. I'm leaving so many great friends here in Virginia. But we're here tonight to talk about Steve. And I had not met Steve until he arrived at our board meeting on Monday. I am very impressed with him. We have had a great week, and we're going to finish up our tour tomorrow, having lunch with Otis and Doug Harwood. I don't know where Doug's is. He's generally in that chair.
He is.
But anyway, Steve is from New York. And I'm going to let him tell you his background, but we're also pleased to have his wife Peggy that's here with us. They have leased a cabin just outside town, and this is going to be their home, unlike me where I have a home here but commuted back to Raleigh on most weekends. And he's going to be a resident with you. So Steve, I'm going to turn the mic over to you.
Thank you, Glad. Everybody I've met has been really, really courteous and given us a great welcome. Peggy and I are coming to you. We now work at Alfred University at the equestrian program there. We're going to finish up the postseason. We have a team the end of this month, and then on the 27th, I'll start my career here at the Virginia Horse Center. I'm looking forward to working with everybody. I'm going to jump in head first at the deep end of the pool. So any help I can be in anything that we need with the Horse Center, please be in touch. Thank you so much.
Steve, thanks for being here. And Peggy, welcome. We're excited for the next chapter of the Virginia Horse Center. There are a lot of great things going on that Glenn and his team and his successor, John Nicholson, there's a great foundation to build upon. So I am concerned that with you living in the community, our meals tax revenue will decline, because I know Glenn had a dinner group out weekly at least. But we're excited for Glenn's next step, and thrilled that you're here and look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much.
And we welcome you all to stay for the remainder of the evening. But if you want to go out and get prepared, Doug is actually at the Buena Vista City Council meeting, which also started at 7, or they started at 6 o'clock. So if they wind up, he may come and join us. So rest assured, he's not gold bricking. He's out working hard. So thank you all for being with us. We have no public hearings this evening, first in many meetings. The next is consideration of the minutes, and those were presented in your council packet. Unless there are any changes or corrections, and if there's no objection, we will approve those as presented. Seeing no objections, they are approved. Next item on our agenda is citizens' remarks and comments, and invite anyone who would like to speak to council this evening to please be recognized. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to council? Hearing the dull roar of the air handler, I will close the citizens' remarks and comments at 7:16 and move straight into our consent agenda and ask for council's consideration.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I would ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Alligood?
Aye.
Mr. Betts?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler?
Aye.
Ms. Strong?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. I'm not aware of any unfinished business, and we'll go directly into boards and commissions and call on the Blue Ridge Resource Authority. Mr. Smith?
No report, but Blue Ridge Resource Authority meets in this room Monday at 4:30.
Very
Y'all are
good.
welcome to attend and see what we do.
Thrilling information. And before you put that microphone away, Mr. Smith, you can update us on Main Street Lexington.
Main Street Lexington has finished up all of their reporting and starting to visit our downtown businesses in preparation for the busy spring season. Main Street Lexington is hosting a Rev Up for area Virginia Main Street directors on Wednesday, March 20th from 10 to 3 at the Gin Hotel Ballroom. The topic will be how to better engage volunteers and best practices. Friday, March 22nd will be a cleanup day working with the Junior National Honor Society students from Maury River Middle School and Lilburn Downing Middle School, students with their advisors, and along with the Freedom Food Festival Steering Committee, Main Street is working on a grant through the Virginia Tourism Corporation for marketing funding for the visitor center, specifically for the Freedom Food Festival as an event marketing grant. That's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any questions for Mr. Smith? Hearing none. Planning Commission, Ms. Strong.
No report. And as I mentioned during our work session, we will not have a meeting next Thursday. We didn't have any applications before us.
Very good. Don't get used to that.
I know.
Regional Tourism Board, Mr. Betts.
Tourism adopted its 2025 budget at a regional tourism board meeting on February 21st, 2024. Nothing further.
That's all you got.
That's all I got for tourism.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
I have a lengthy report for Threshold.
Okay. Making up. Share your time on that one. Gotcha. Raro, Mr. Ziegler.
The RARA Board of Directors met yesterday. I'll report that as we start our spring sports, we currently, as of yesterday or the day before, we had 252 kids signed up for our T-ball, which is essentially rookie, minors, majors baseball, that whole, all the boys. And that's 252 this year, 233 last year. So a nice increase. And as far as the girls that play, in the past, we've always kind of had two leagues broke, for our ages. We've got such a great turnout this year for softball. We've got three more age appropriate leagues. And so we have 145 girls currently signed up for softball. We had 104 last year, and we're still taking kids. So that's a great increase in softball we're thrilled with. We've been working really hard to take care of our fields, get them ready. It was nice that the winter wasn't too harsh. But unfortunately, we do have some of our fields that people use to drive in circles. If you are in the community and you see someone doing donuts in an outfield or an infield, please call the police, because it's ultimately RARO staff that has to fix that problem. And we could be spending our time on other things.
Where did that occur?
Laurel Park. And then also, we are working with the city. I shared during our work session about the backstops at Brubaker Field, but also we've been using a temporary outfield fence at Fox Field. But we've got funds that we believe that we can mobilize to put a permanent outfield fence there. And we're working with Public Works to make sure that it's appropriate, that we're not in the way if we were to do that. But we feel that for safety and aesthetics, it might be better for that field to have a permanent outfield fence, and that it won't impact mowing and it doesn't impact anything else that's happening at Fox Field. So we're pretty excited if we can kind of dress up that facility even more. It's a great location. It's a great field. And then also some of our participants will play basketball and pickleball out at Rivermont at that gym. And there's work being done to upgrade the lighting in that gymnasium. That building is not owned by Rockbridge County. Essentially, it's owned by, we call it Rivermont. I think it's owned by Centra Health. And so we're upgrading those lights so that people can see when they play basketball and pickleball. So happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Ziegler? I have one with the permanent fence concept. I know historically RARO does not seek sponsorship of any sorts, but I don't know if the board hasn't had any conversations. I would invite the board to consider making use of the fence, perhaps to put up signage for different businesses. Sponsoring teams, I'm aware of the problems and anxieties with different sponsorship. That might be something that works well and provides some additional funding for equipment, in particular for the RARO programs.
It's a great idea. Up until a few years ago, remember, we had those world famous RARO reversible jerseys.
Yes.
That everyone might have, and you can find them around Lexington. But, a couple of years ago, we went away from that when we wanted to try to brand RARO a little bit more. We wanted kids to have a jersey that they got to keep, that they could wear to school, that they could wear in the community, and you would kind of see it. And so a couple of years ago, we did start to have sponsors on the back of the jerseys for a small nominal fee. Maybe you can sponsor a team for $100, $150, which is a lot, but then again, to get that advertising, it's a good deal. And so I think we are going to dip our toe into the signage. We want it to be appropriate, not mess up, again, aesthetics of a beautiful field. What it also lends itself to is sometimes we have travel teams that will do tournaments at Brubaker, and they like to be able to hang signage, and that's obviously not permanent, but it looks better on a permanent fence when they do that temporarily. So I think it's something that we'll look at, but we do want to be careful that when the fields are not in use, how that signage will look the rest of the time. So good suggestion.
There's also, I'm thinking you can build the fence such that it can handle. Sometimes a fence gets built and then somebody says, let's stick something on it. So forward thinking as RARO administration always is. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Ziegler? Very good. Threshold, Mr. Betts.
Yes, sir. So we did not have a threshold meeting, but today I attended the CSPDC Regional Housing Study meeting on March 7th, 2024. Some important stuff came out today. The final study is coming out June 2024. It will offer regional solutions and partnership solutions. And the partnership solutions would focus on collaboration between neighboring localities. There will also be local solutions tailored to specific jurisdictions. There will be 3 or 4 solutions recommended for each jurisdiction. There's some specific suggestions that I'm going to talk about for Lexington further into the report. Regional solutions, which had different levels of expected impact and complexity, discussed were introducing community land trust home ownership model, expanding housing counseling services, pursuing regional land bank entity, establishing a hub for home improvement grants and resources, and supporting permanent housing options to help end homelessness. Local solutions for our locality were still to be reviewed. Local solution themes generally include continue or initiate zoning reforms to promote housing diversity in alignment with the comprehensive plan updates, take advantage of EDAs to strengthen housing job connections and provide incentives for affordable housing development, increase efforts to revitalize vacant homes and support owner-occupied rehab, organize housing education campaigns to help public better understand issues and solutions, and leverage state funding opportunities to conduct specific plans, prepare sites for development, etc. And for Lexington specifically, the quote unquote priority suggestions that they had were assemble a comprehensive incentives package for affordable housing development and continue momentum to evaluate and determine potential for underused properties. The secondary quote unquote recommendations were continue productive zoning reform measures and market new opportunities to property owners and developers, and explore working with Virginia Resource Authority to take advantage of their new power to fund local affordable housing efforts.
Very good. Where was the meeting? Was it in Stanton? or
Virtual.
Virtual? Very good. Very good. Any questions for Mr. Betts? We would certainly look forward to the full report as it comes available and additional details. But thank you for attending and representing the city and progress that that report is making. Maury Service Authority, Mr. Alligood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A general comment, meetings in future of MSA board meetings will be held at the water treatment plant at Osage Lane. We used to meet here, but we're now going to meet all the time at Osage Lane. There's a nice setup out there for internet connection as well. And so be advised. And so the next meeting we have scheduled is a budget workshop next Tuesday at 5 o'clock at Osage Lane at the water treatment plant. And it is to discuss the projected rates for the coming year. At the last MSA board meeting, Davenport Financial Group gave us a presentation projecting suggested, not firm, but suggested rate increases for the next 10 years to pay for the increased expenses for the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plant modernization. And that projection is in the neighborhood of 8% per year. What the rates will end up being will be to be determined, but that is the Davenport recommendation. It's a little more than 8, but it's not 9 in there. And that's the end of the report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Alligood? Mr. Smith.
Annually, how much have water and wastewater rates increased over the last 10 years? Do you recall?
They've doubled.
So 8% a year plus
Right.
over the last 10 years.
I had mentioned in our work session go back to your econ days and how long does it take money to double? Typically the rule of 72. And so 8% would take 9 years to double again.
So they doubled from a decade ago and rejecting another doubling recommended in the next decade.
Correct.
So a tripling from 10 years ago.
And when it doubles again, that means it's going to be double, which will be 4 times.
Thank you.
For you journalism majors, here's a math lesson for you. The rule of 72. It's always good to know and a handy nugget to work with. Thank you, Mr. Alligood. For my report, I just wanted to report, as you are well aware, Lexington, Buena Vista, and Rockbridge County, as I like to refer to as our community, is working on the Rockbridge Area Health Services Complex that will house the Department of Social Services. And been working with Nick Crockett out of Washington to solicit our senators and congressmen in Washington. And there was an effort last year where the administrators went and called on these folks for the current year funding, which was unsuccessful. Part of it was explained or advised that it was because the administrators came and just the way things were working out for the allocation of earmarks by the elected officials in Washington. And very impromptu, pretty much from last week, Nick put together a meeting this past Tuesday that included Tyson Cooper, mayor of Buena Vista, Leslie Ayers, chairman of the Board of Supervisors from Rockbridge County, and myself with the administrators. And we drove up and back on Tuesday to seek funds for the health services complex. The amount that we requested usually are anywhere from $1 million to $5 million. And because of the collaboration of our communities, we are making a request for $4 million. The window's not open yet for next year's budgeting, but we're teed up and in the queue. And so we went and had the opportunity to meet with representatives of Senator Warner's office. And then we actually met with Senator Kane and with Congressman Klein. All of them were very receptive and very appreciative of the concept of the complex, the efforts for Department of Social Services and working with Department of Health, as well as Rockbridge Community Health Center to have a general location on the property that we own jointly in Buena Vista. But just wanted to make you aware of that meeting. It came together, as I said, last week, got the nod that these appointments had gotten line or had become in line, and we were able to make a day of it and have a very productive time. Tim Kaine reminded us that he honeymooned in Lexington, so it's near and dear to his heart. We're all reminded that Senator Warner wrecked in Rockbridge County on a bike and broke his arm, I think it was. So he has memories. He says they're fond of our community. And then Nick Crockett, who is the lobbyist that assisted us, grew up in Lexington as the 1996 graduate of Rockbridge County High School. So it was fun to catch up with him and swap stories from Lexington from his time here growing up. And the three entities worked really well together, and we'll see how we progress from here. But the message that we conveyed to all three legislators was that we were making this trip explicitly to get their support for this project, and that this would be a shot in the arm to support those, if you will, most in need in our community. And the $4 million would go a long way towards propelling this to be a reality much sooner, but that we were committed to the project It's not a pie in the sky. We're moving forward with it, and they have an opportunity to do some good in their district. And that message again was well received. Welcome any questions that you have. Otherwise, I will pass along to the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All of you on council are very well aware of the historic marker that was recently approved for the Green Book, the African American Traveler's Guide. That will be placed. We've been approved to place that in front of the Tourism Center on Washington Street in the landscaped area there, and it should be installed yet this month. The second marker that we have that's been in transition is the one that used to be along the bypass that commemorated the African American Cemetery on East Washington Street. And of course, you know that's being placed in front of Evergreens Cemetery, and that will be placed in the first part of April, early April. So we're looking at trying to schedule a ribbon cutting, if you will, unveiling of those two markers in their location in mid-April. We'll keep you informed of that. So maybe one event for just the two markers and get people out in the community to share in that really interesting and happy opportunity to have two other markers now in the community, more accessible about our history. The city attorney and city staff are looking at a proposed franchise agreement with Brightspeed Communications. Brightspeed Communications has the assets of Central Telephone Company of Virginia, Centel. I don't know how long ago they acquired it and what the journey was for them to get it, but they want to place additional communications equipment in our right of way and be able to maintain that equipment. Centel previously had a franchise with us. Brightspeed does not, so we're putting in place a franchise agreement with them. That does not exclude others from having a franchise agreement in the right of way. Many communication companies already do, electrical companies do, so it's non-exclusive. And again, the attorney is working on that with staff, and we'll bring that to city council in the near future. Some updates from the fire department. The department assisted and responded to a house fire in Buena Vista, and something a little different again. The department responded to a call at Willow Springs apartment where a 10-month-old had a foot lodged and tangled in the crib, and the foot was extricated from the crib without injury to the little child. So I don't know how it was entangled, but the parents apparently couldn't get it free. So the department is hosting Rockbridge County High School students, EMS students who are being required to do a ride along in an ambulance and have contact with patients. And this is being done to help them with a requirement for their EMT class. The department hosted the Firefighter Instructor 1 class, which is required to be qualified to become a certified fire training instructor. And that was available to all firefighters in our region who were interested in that training. Deputy Chief Trent Roberts attended a tabletop exercise at VMI that simulated a large power outage in Lexington that left VMI without power, and steps that would then have to be taken to maintain safety on the post. Mr. Will Byther, who you might recall started Paddle and Pedal Rockbridge and operated out of the Jordan's Point Park, has now had an opportunity to manage a much larger enterprise in Sewanee and the Sewanee Music Park in Florida. So he will not be managing his pedal and paddle business here in Lexington this summer. He's hoping to find somebody that will manage it for him, but at this point in time, that is not a certain thing. So he may or may not be with us, or the business may or not be with us this summer. We're also doing some riparian plantings in Jordan's Point Park. City staff working with volunteers have placed a number of cuttings along the bank of the river in several locations that were vulnerable to some erosion. And so you'll see those cuttings if you have not already done so. They're in place. We also will not be mowing around those areas then, so those cuttings can become established. So you might see a little more vegetation grow up in those areas. I think there are 3 areas in the park itself that along the river that you might see that new growth in. A little opportunity to find out more about IDAs and EDAs. Our partners, Rockbridge County and City of Buena Vista, have organized a training, event, if you will, or educational event for their EDAs and invited us to participate. So at this point in time, they're looking at 2 dates in late April, the 23rd and 25th, when speakers would come to our community, explain how to best use an EDA or an IDA, what type of resources are available. One of the things I think that I've asked the county, Brandy and Christina from Buena Vista to also focus on is what are the advantages of the IDA versus the EDA. So we might determine whether or not we're better served to have an EDA as opposed to an IDA. An IDA, of course, is an industrial development authority. Obviously, Lexington is not really about industry today. The IDA tool has been in place probably since the 70s. EDAs, or economic development authorities, were something that were put in place after that, much broader scope for development purposes. It may be, in fact, the tool that's best for us to use. So we have 3 IDA members who are interested in going to that training. And Councilmember Strawn is interested, as well as Jennifer Bell. So we might be able to bring back a recommendation to City Council as how best to use the resources that we could have available to us in the form of an EDA instead of an IDA. The health department is having one day, March 15th from 1 to 3:30, when they'll be closed on a Friday, a week from tomorrow, for an all hands staff meeting. They will open back up at 3:30, but from 1 until 3:30, they'll close all of their offices throughout the regions so that they can have all their staff participate in some type of obviously region-wide meeting. So just as an FYI, if you hear something or see something, that is the case. And that's all I have. If you have questions, I will try and answer them.
Thank you, Jim. Members of council have any questions for the city manager on his report? Hearing none, welcome, Mike Lockaby with Jeremy's on vacation or doing something else, but we're glad you're here with us and welcome your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Jeremy is on vacation and happy to see you tonight. Getting to see you is, of course, yet another reason to look forward to Jeremy's vacation.
Very good. Any questions for the city attorney? Hearing none, we'll go into new business and I'll call on the city manager to introduce the discussion and consideration of a resolution of support for a feasibility study for Regional General Aviation Airport. And before he gives his presentation, I would like to recognize Jay Williams, who's with us this evening, and offer him the opportunity to make a few comments after the city manager presents and is available for questions that council may have. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you saw in the packet, there's a letter from the Board of Supervisors Chair, Ms. Leslie Ayers, explaining what the county is hoping to do with regard to an airport study that will be funded primarily by the Federal Department of Aviation and the Virginia Department of Aviation. There is a small local component, in-kind contribution that is required. The county has asked both the city of Buena Vista and Lexington to participate in that, partner with them. They believe it's a very good economic development opportunity. Of course, the study would indicate whether or not that is true, whether or not it's actually feasible to have an airport, and that is a general aviation airport here in Rockbridge County. There are certainly pros and cons that we've all heard out in the community, but this is an opportunity to just evaluate with some certainty whether or not it could be done. And so they've got a request before both, again, the city of Buena Vista and you here in Lexington as city council to participate in that. And they have a resolution that has been drafted up that I presented to you. And of course, my recommendation, because they are good partners and there is an economic development potential to it, to let's take a good close look, spend a few $1,000s and participate in the study with our neighbors and determine whether or not it's feasible and it's helpful to us to have in our community a general aviation airport. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Jay, would you like to come forward and add on anything available, and then you and Jim can take turns with any questions. Welcome.
Mayor Friedman, City Council, thank you all very much for the opportunity to come out this evening and first off, answer any questions that you may have. Just a little bit about myself real quick. Coming up on 20 years here in the community. Just recently retired from BMI last year. RARO conversations are very, very familiar to me. My heart is there on the field at Fox. And recently, this past year, I was appointed to the Rockbridge County EDA committee. So I represent South River District. I think Jim summed it up very well on the talking points for this study and this initiative. The last study that was done here in our area was in 1994. Now, has anything drastically changed? Has the terrain changed? Absolutely not. But, you know, a 30-year-old study, I think, needs to be refreshed. The EDA feels that it's an opportunity to look at this attribute, if you will, to our community and the economic boost that it will bring. And if I could just cover a couple things here real quickly. We see a direct connection with a general aviation facility and working with our higher education institutions, specifically Mountain Gateway Community College, developing educational programs, bringing in new programs. I work very closely with John Ranoni, president of Mountain Gateway, and we've already had some brief discussions. He is very excited about the opportunity to collaborate. I go back to Mayor Friedman's comment. He said, this is our community. All right. This is our community. It's not Rockbridge. It's not Lexington. It's not Buena Vista. It's not Glasgow separate. We're all one community. We're here to collaborate. We're here to do what's right for our community to take us forward into the next, you know, several years, long after we're gone. A personal experience when I was at VMI, just to give you an idea, the airports that supported VMI activities is north of Stanton. All right. In order to get your VIPs in for graduation, commencements, special events, we'd have to release our law enforcement officers to detail up 81 to go get them, bring them back, and then return them to the airport to depart. What you do, you strain your law enforcement program, specifically at VMI, when you're doing that, bringing extra people on duty, using our MOUs with our local communities and law enforcement in Lexington and Rockbridge County in order to support. Bringing an airport closer to us is going to enhance operations like that. As I touched on earlier, the educational opportunity that we have here working with our community colleges, XFS, if anybody went to that ribbon cutting out in Natural Bridge, they are one of our supporters that have put in a letter of support for this feasibility study. As Jim said, it's a, you know, it's a financial commitment. The Rockbridge County has a 20% commitment, and we're asking for Lexington and Buena Vista to be partners in this study and to really peel back the onion, if you will, and look at all aspects of our community, the impacts that it will have on our community going forward. So with that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Jay, thank you. Appreciate you being here and offer council opportunity to ask questions they may have on this topic.
The expected cost for the feasibility study for Lexington's share would be a little over $8,000. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Would there, I have a
Sir.
question. Would there be any chance that the airport would be located within the city of Lexington?
I would have to look at the land use for the city of Lexington, but I would not see that being a feasible option. No, sir.
It'd be much more likely that it would be somewhere
It's going to be
in Rockbridge County.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And right now, if I could refer to a note here, we have about 257 acres within the Rockbridge County area. We have done a little bit of homework on the size of a general aviation facility. It's about 150 acres. So you're looking at 0.06% of what we have available now. Is everything flat? No, that's what this feasibility study is going to do, is give us options for potential location of an airport. But it's, I would say 99.99 is going to be in the county.
And would those sites that were originally projected a long time ago still be in the running?
I'm sure they will come up in the conversation. Yes, sir.
In there,
I'll just add on for clarification. Some of those sites, as I understand it, now have a conservation easement on them. It would not be identified for opportunities.
conservation easement preempts airports?
Preempts everything. conservation easement is undeveloped.
Will the feasibility study for the general aviation airport include any component about potential expanded operations in the future, or will it only look at specifically the general aviation airport?
I'll yield on that one. I don't know.
Okay. Specifically, I can't say at this time. I will tell you that if we invest in a feasibility study that's short term, we'd be missing the mark. I think you need to look at, bringing on a general aviation airport with the potential of expansion, if you have that capability, and what you would bring in, in the future. But if we look at a mark in time and don't look to the future, I think we're going to miss.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I just, again, pile on, if your question is, will it become a passenger airport at some point in time in the future? That's not the intention.
No, sir.
Just general aviation.
Sure. I think there are some, I guess, there's some room in between a passenger and a general aviation airport. And I was wondering, could there potentially be any expanded studies, or, could
In the future.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you see, with this initial feasibility study we're talking about for general aviation, the opportunity for it to be a platform for a future study that would go into more detail on expansion. But right now it's general aviation only.
Okay. Thank you.
So just to establish, I guess there are 3 airstrips in the county now. And because they have to be re-upped via CUP every so often. A lot of people see the one out Route 60, Interstate 64, just for frame of reference. And that cannot exceed 2,100 feet, I believe. And I think at a minimum, what we're talking about with the general aviation is a little over 5,000.
That's right. 5,000, a little bit.
So when you're thinking, just for your own, again, from a reference, how long 2,100 feet is versus 5,000. So it's a very long, airstrip. And I did some research, and you referenced previous studies, and I think multiple studies have been done in the past, multiple. And it's fun to go back to the Roanoke Times and see when they were things voted down in 1991, 1996. I mean, it's all there. And so in 1996, when they voted it down via referendum, 75% against and 25% for in the county. The city didn't have a vote, neither did Buena Vista. We weren't allowed to vote in that. It was going to cost $27 to $30 million just for the airstrip. No buildings, nothing. And so that was 30 years ago. It was going to cost $30 million
For the 2,100 foot.
for the 5,000. And so if we move forward with this, and we agree to the cost sharing right now, which I know $8,000 is not a lot of money, I have some concerns that it's setting precedent. And again, it's probably very unlikely that we'll even think that we should build an airport. So one would say we might just be wasting this $8,000. But if we were to move forward with an airport, I'm concerned that we're setting precedent that we're going to contribute our proportional share to not $30 million, because I know we would only pay supposedly 2% of that 30 million or something. But if it's 50 million, if it's now $60 million to build just the airstrip, not including buildings, not including anything, I'm concerned that we're saying, oh yeah, we're interested in, and and so it concerns me, because I don't think anyone has explained yet truly what general aviation is and how that helps the citizens of Lexington, Rockbridge County, Buena Vista, when we all have to invest in a city hall and a high school and a jail and a landfill and our water and sewer system. It hasn't been clear to me. It's only been explained to me that private industry will benefit, and somehow it will be better that they won't have to go 25 miles up towards Stanton, and they can only go, if you're a Natural Bridge, it still wouldn't make sense to drive to the northern part of the county. If you're a Natural Bridge, you're going south. So you might not be using the general aviation airport if it's located in Rafine. So I that's one of my challenges. And when I attended and watched the Board of Supervisors, seemed like the only reason they moved forward with this was because they're spending the EDA's dollars, not their their general fund dollars. And so it just kind of concerns me, if we move forward with this, are we spending IDA dollars? Or are we spending general fund dollars from the city?
Certainly, we could request the IDA to use their funds, and I don't know why they wouldn't. They've been more than happy in the past to consider if there was something that they could do. A number of times I've spoken with them, well, what can we do with these dollars, Jim? Now, that doesn't say they would, but I don't know why they wouldn't make that investment if they were asked to by city council.
And to be clear, this resolution right here is just about the funding for the feasibility study. It would not commit us to move forward with the project in any way other than funding for the feasibility study.
Absolutely. I think to Mr. Sigler's point, though, there might be some expectation from somebody out there that you as city council committed once, and so you're going to be obligated to commit again. I would say you've always got this, you or future councils always have the right to say, no, we never committed to that. If you wanted to, we could change the resolution saying in no way, shape, or form does this commit us to spending anything on a future airport, the actual construction,
And
to make it clear.
And am I clear that this study can occur without our $8,000 or Buena Vista's $8,000? The county, if they wish to do it, they could come up with the additional $16,000. Is that right? Like if they wanted to?
If we don't get support from Buena Vista and City of Lexington, we'd have to then go back to the board and find the money.
To the EDA.
Yes.
Yes.
The committee that I'm on. If I could just make an analogy here and kind of tie something together. When I was at VMI, a lot of people sitting in this room were here in 2003 when the bridge blew out at South River. A group of people from all diverse areas of our community came together at VMI, got together and went and found a grant source to rebuild that bridge. We came to City of Lexington, City of Buena Vista, and Rockbridge County because, again, this is our community, and requested support for the study and the initial design of that bridge, which is now in place today, which supports and enhances our outdoor recreation, which I know Mr. Smith is very big on, and I know a lot of y'all are too. So, again, I think it's a prime example of what we're now coming to each one of the jurisdictions and asking for the support and collaboration to look to the future. And at one point you were making, you talked about the private citizen. I think what's important here is to know this will be an economic development attractor to businesses looking at our area. We sit right at the intersection, as we know, of 6481. And an airport in this area would definitely be an enhancement to our community. Who's going to come? We don't know, excuse me. But I will tell you, taking that first step and really driving down in a feasibility study and getting all the information together so it can be looked at and a conscious decision made moving forward, I think is very important.
Thank you, Jay. Yes, sir. Members of council have any other questions, observations? Mr. Smith?
Thanks, Jay. I don't know if you can answer this question, but going back to the statement you just made regarding an economic development tool that the airport might become, how much interest has been shared by corporate interests or private interests that an airport, if we had an airport, they would be able to come here and do business? Because in the last,
Are you talking about external?
yes,
External, I don't have a specific one, but internal, again, I referenced FX S out in Natural Bridge has provided a letter of support. They see a definite, enhancement to their operation. UTS Systems, Bark Electric also. Again, you put a general aviation airport into our area, you can get a quicker delivery of equipment, supplies, etc., into our community versus, as was discussed before and as I referenced earlier in my conversation, having to go up north of Stanton to go get it and bring it back. So it becomes an enhancement to business operations. Did that answer your question, sir?
So no external interests have shown
At this time, it's all
emphasized
been,
that an airport would be an attractor for new development economically.
well, we've had some general aviation studies and deep dives like that have indicated that our area is sitting in a prime location for consideration of this type of enhancement. So, but nobody's come to us and said, you put that airport there, we'll be there the next day.
Right. Okay.
If you look at a map, would you say that there's kind of a gap in coverage in this part of the state for airport services?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's north of us. It's south of us. It's east of us over in the Lynchburg area. And see, that's another great question you have that drives me to a comment. Liberty University has aviation courses and certifications and private pilots certifications they run out of their university. They actually own an airport themselves. And that's another thing, working with our higher education institutions from an educational standpoint. You got ROTC sitting at BMI with naval pilots, Army pilots, Air Force pilots, getting that private license while they're here for their 4 years. That just only enhances their careers once they get the diploma and leave.
Very good. Chuck, I'd also respond that I'm not aware of any businesses that have said, if you had aviation, we'd move there. But Jay Langston with the Shenandoah Valley Partnership at a retirement reception last week, said how excited he was to be able to, as this moved forward, to be able to let businesses know it really is an attractive component for a community when people are considering it. It's not primary per se, but it's an add-on that will differentiate you from another community. So where Augusta County, for instance, as David's pointed out, the airport in Waynesboro specifically, Weir's Cave in Rockingham County, there's been greater development around those airports. And I think Shenandoah Valley Partnership and Jay Langston would tell you there's a direct correlation where Interstate 64 and 81 being very attractive, having no general aviation, it doesn't make our community as attractive.
And Eagles Nest, of course, in Waynesboro is a privately owned airport. An individual owns that, not an authority.
Correct.
And of course, I think, there's 63 general aviation airports in Virginia, and they're all owned by an authority. They all lose money, but they are intended to be an economic benefit to the community. So this will not be profitable. The Eagles Nest one is a fly-in. People live there. They have their own private planes that they park at their house. And so it does some general aviation services, but it's a fly-in community. So people are basically paying to live there, and that's what makes it operate. So
I think for the cost of $8,000, it's worth doing the feasibility study. I'm generally in support of this resolution. That being said, there's a small modification I'd like to see at the very end of it, where it says and the last clause, and just say providing support for the feasibility study, because saying for this initiative and cost share, I think, to Mr. Sigler's point, I think that if we commit to doing the feasibility study, we'd want to see what the feasibility study said before committing to the initiative. But I'm in support of doing the feasibility study because I think it would be worth the money.
And subject to IDA monies, paying for it.
but let's city manager respond to that, because I don't know that we can.
We can't modify it.
Well, I think we can make a request to the IDA, but I don't know.
That's another, I guess that's another discussion.
Are we in our discussion part? Because if so, Jake, probably sit down.
Well, you're welcome to sit down there.
Don't need
Yeah.
I'm good.
I welcome more discussion.
Sure. I'll bring up a few points. When I was considering this resolution, I turned to our comprehensive land use plan and also the county's comprehensive land use plan, because those were both put together with lots of public input on what we should do with our land. And in both plans, they have one paragraph on air transportation, and which says that we are surrounded by airports. The county says the Shenandoah Valley Regional Airport is only 30 miles from the northern portion of Rockbridge County. Neither plan says that we should expand air service in our area. Our plan in particular emphasizes environmental stewardship. And quite frankly, private plane travel is the worst environmental polluter in terms of transportation. If you look at it on emissions per mile per person. So we are emphasizing walking and biking. And I think having a private airport, having an airport to service private planes is counter to that. Looking at the county's comprehensive land use plan, they want to preserve their farmland and also the scenic views, the vistas. And that would be contrary to this as well. If you are paying attention to a lot of the issues in the county right now, it's been solar farms, the issue with, again, it taking up valuable agricultural land and also affecting the viewscapes, windmills, the issues there, even though they help the environment like solar panels, it affects the viewscapes and even event venues. There's concern with the noise from that. And that is what is in the minds of the county residents right now. Well, an airport's going to bring all those problems magnified, not just to the neighbors, but through all of us in the region. And for those reasons, I appreciate the EDA's work on this, because I do see it from your standpoint as being a potential economic development opportunity. However, I think looking at the overall needs of the county and for Lexington, I'm not in favor of moving forward, even with the feasibility study.
I would just point to the map on page 51 of the meeting packet, and it looks like there's a pretty large gap in this region for an airport. If you contrast it with, say, the map on page 52. So, I mean, I think it's worth doing the feasibility study, whether or not, we support we'll move forward with the airport or the general aviation airport. I don't know. I think that's why you do the feasibility study. And so I think it would be worth the $8,000 to do a feasibility study. Have more information.
Yeah, I've been wrestling with this too, and the only way I could justify funding this is through the IDA. When we just went through our budget and our comprehensive capital improvement plan, we're spending millions of dollars on improvements in the city, and I just cannot, in good conscience, spend $8,000 of taxpayer money. IDA is separate, but if it came from the general fund, I think that sends a very mixed message to our constituency that we would like to participate in a study that might justify an airport that we may or may not be on the hook for. If it's negative, then there's $8,000 that we lost out on. But if it comes out positive, then what are we on the hook for? One of the things that does set us apart that we don't have an airport is exactly what Leslie just described. We live in one of the best nature-bound communities in the Commonwealth. It didn't succeed before, I think, for a lot of those similar reasons. And I personally am not in favor of an airport. I'd like being a partner with the county, but sometimes that partnership doesn't quite work out as well as we would hope.
I just think when you look at the letters in support from the institutions of higher learning, I mean, they're going to be competing against other institutions of higher learning for students, for certain programming. There was just mention of Liberty having their own airport. So I think that it's just worth doing the feasibility study. I don't think we commit to anything further than the feasibility study. And, I don't see how we're on the hook for anything other than the feasibility study if we don't commit to that.
Well, I can't see that reaching students' enrollment competitively would hinge on whether we have an airport or not. Liberty is an orange compared to the apples that we have here.
I mean, there's,
I know, and we can
we can
debate
debate
all
back
night
and
about
forth,
it.
but-
You're in favor of it.
Yeah,
I'm
fair enough.
I'm not.
Fair enough.
So
Fair enough. Well, you did say that you may be in favor if the IDA used money towards it.
that would be the
Okay.
not general fund. For the same reason that
I
you
understand.
don't want
I understand.
taxpayers putting up and down flags up and down.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So
Fair enough.
I will just comment on having the IDA funded. I watched the county supervisor meeting as well, and actually felt like it did not fit for our area for the reasons I stated, but I still was going to be a regional partner and vote in favor of it until I heard the county meeting. The Board of Supervisors did not talk about the benefits of having an airport. Their only concern was we're not spending taxpayer dollars. This is on the EDA. And I got the impression that they were shifting the blame on it, so to speak, that they weren't going to take ownership of it. And that really concerned me. And I thought if they're trying to avoid having any skin in the game, then I don't feel a need to partner. And I feel like that's what we're doing by pushing it off on the IDA. It's only $8,000. If we want to do the study, do the study, but don't base it on whether we pay for it out of the general fund or the IDA pays for it.
Yeah, I agree with you from watching the Board of Supervisors meeting, and obviously I don't know the future, but I'm not sure board supervisors are elected by geography from where they represent. And so I'm not sure which district, which supervisor would put up their hand and say, hey, I got 200 acres for you that's flat, that has minimal rock. We live in Rockbridge County. And, Mountain Empire Airport, which is down 81, which is a 5,300 foot runway parallel to 81, has, I think, 28 on average flights in and out a day. That's a lot, actually. So even if you had 5 flights in or out a day, I think that would be a lot for a community in Rockbridge County. We hear people concerned about the helicopter in Lexington that flies a couple times a day. I struggled by seeing the lack of enthusiasm from the supervisors for this. And again, it's only $8,000. But it's obviously going to come back and say, oh, there's not an airport within X number of miles. And oh, you're at an interchange. That'd be ideal. And oh, you could have a warehouse there. Well, in my 25, 30, almost 30 years living here, we've not had a desire locally to be that kind of a community that has warehouses here that we don't have many here, so I'm not sure. I know I'm getting ahead of ourselves. This is just the study, but the study is going to say an airport would be great. And in 1996, when they, just to have bonds issued to buy the property, the 200 acres, which you might have to do eminent domain, that's a whole other issue. You have to have a referendum by law. You have to have a referendum to issue bonds to procure the land. And in the referendum lost big time.
That was like 30 years ago. Though.
Exactly.
But that's a lot, 30 years ago.
And 35 years ago,
Long time.
you've got the records from the individual Board of Supervisors that said they had it picked out in Fancy Hill. And the supervisor representing Fancy Hill said, I do not want this in Fancy Hill that I represent, killed the whole thing.
I'm just saying that 30 years is a long time.
Mhm.
That's, yeah, well,
Jay, we're still in a discussion mode here, so I don't know if you have any response to any things that you've heard, but welcome if you'd like to make any additional statements before ask for council's consideration.
Just one quick, I appreciate the opportunity to stand up here in front of you and have this discussion this evening. I'll be interested to see if this goes to a vote, what we got. But one thing I would say in the end of the day, all 3 jurisdictions, now I'll include Glasgow, we're all in this thing together. So I totally understand where you are, but hopefully, we'll see something positive happen. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Jay, thanks for being with us. it's, I greatly appreciate council members, stating their positions and, the thought process and working at this. One of the elements that I think hasn't been discussed is that we're always looking for ways to expand our tax base, typically from business. And I think the general aviation is just another element that could bring that. Looking at the information that was provided, yes, Eagle's Nest is private, but there are several people from Lexington that keep their planes there and fly privately in and out of there. So they don't live there, and they would love to have that same benefit of not having to drive up the road to do that. But as Leslie points out, if you hold in esteem Mother Earth and carbon footprint, this is something that doesn't support clean air and shrinking your carbon footprint. So just make those observations. If it were an easy decision and clear cut, we would have not had any discussion, but I'm grateful for the robust discussion and professionalism that you all always exude when we have these discussions. Don't have to agree, but I greatly appreciate the respect shared by all. But I would ask for council's consideration. It's before you, and a request from the Board of Supervisors and a letter from the board chair, Leslie Ayers, and I'd like to know how you'd like to respond.
Jim, did we tighten up the cost share since the population figures were not
Yes,
accurate?
our dollars would reduce by $5.
$5?
Yeah.
Based on the June 29th?
Based on the
statistic?
numbers you provided,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
BVs would go up by 1, the counties will go up by 19, and ours will go down by 5. So $25.
Oh.
It's Spencer suggested it might have been the number of decibel points that people use to do the calculation. You were correct, though. There was a difference. Yes.
Well,
It wasn't much.
For those in the audience taking notes, Weldon Cooper is a resource out of Charlottesville that keeps track of populations. And a lot of times when we do cost sharing, we do it based upon population. And there was an update that Mr. Ziegler located as of January of this year. When this was originally put together, I think by the county, it was in November, December, so they didn't have the January numbers. So we have more accurate population numbers.
Would I be able to make a motion just striking those few words that I said? Is that possible? The support for the feasibility study. I just want to strike this initiative and cost share. And I would make to that, with that language amended, I'd make a motion to approve this resolution.
And just to be clear, it's on the bottom of page 2 of 33 or page 28 of 67 of your packet. And that Lexington City Council commits to providing support for the feasibility study.
Yes, sir. And I'd make a motion to that.
Have a motion. Is there a second? Even if for discussion. Hearing no second, the motion dies for lack of a second. Thank you, Mr. Betts, for offering that. And that item is not approved. City Manager, if you can relay information to the Board of Supervisors, we'd be grateful for that.
Certainly will do so.
Item 15.2, discussion and consideration of a resolution establishing a revitalization area for tax parcel 29-1-3.
Mr. Mayor, I hate to be the difficult one here, but just because it didn't pass doesn't necessarily mean that something else happened. It could be tabled, deferred. It could be denied. I hate to say
Very
it,
good.
but something's got to pass. Under.
Then I will second the motion. We need to take a vote on it, is what you're saying?
Well, you need to take a vote on something.
Yeah.
That motion failed. Somebody could make a motion
Yeah.
to say, we'll talk about this next month.
I
Somebody
would-
could make a motion.
I would
"We're
make a
not gonna
different
do this
motion to
now."
say that,
Thank you, Mike.
I wouldn't mind talking to the Board of Supervisors to, again, take their, I would like to, I would not like, if they're all in and they're like, we realize we're willing to take the heat on 200 acres if this says we should have it, Because right now, like you said, their comp plan doesn't indicate it. Right now, they don't like to be able to even see windmills in a different county. I mean, there's concern. But if they're all in, then I don't want to stand in their way. I do want to be regional to support them. I do. If they're all in, but I have not yet picked up on that from them, having watched their meeting and the tone of the meeting and conversations. And I don't want to put words in their mouth. So if we want to meet or we have individual meetings with them and they say, I am good with it if it's going to go in Cars Creek, I'm good with it if it's got to go in Fancy Hill, then I would say if having Lexington support it makes it better,
So should we table it to a further meeting?
I'd be fine with tabling it to a further meeting.
To respond to your observation, the request is simply for a feasibility study. If this council doesn't support moving forward with a feasibility study, then you certainly don't feel comfortable moving forward with an airport. It may come back that there's a recommendation that there's not sufficient acreage to provide it. Don't know. We can project and make presumptions. If no action is taken, the county is welcome to bring it back in the future, but since it's died of no motion, it can languish or
It can hang. Typically
Correct.
speaking, when a matter comes up on the agenda, you need to take some sort of action with it unless it's purely an information item.
But it's a resolution.
no action is action.
Okay.
So, I mean, it would not to debate or question your piece, but to me, council's already has taken action by not responding to it. If you did want to offer some other motion, we could certainly do that. But I think,
I mean,
and there's nothing that precludes Rockbridge County from bringing it back or
table it
making
to
a different request.
May 21st meeting, would you support that?
So you would be saying, Mr. Mayor, just again, for my clarification, being the lawyer here who doesn't understand necessarily how you do things here, this would be deferred indefinitely. It could come back later, but it's deferred indefinitely.
Well, you would need, I think you would need a motion to do that.
Well, it's on the agenda for this meeting. We took no action. We can eliminate it if the county wants to bring it back and bring more guns than Jay to debate with us or plead their case. We can put on the agenda in the future.
I'll make a motion to table it to the March 21st meeting.
Can we-
If that's. I don't know if there'll be a second on that, but I mean, David.
Yeah, I don't object to that. My concern is I think that unless I'm misunderstanding what I've heard, there's not the will of council to.
It seemed like there was some interest in potentially the IDA
To crack.
contributing funding to that.
Sure.
I think we could follow up about IDA potentially following up, get some answers on that
Mhm.
to before the March 21st meeting. Additionally, if we could also have if anybody else wants to come and speak to it, it gives people more time. And then if not, then we can table it indefinitely like we did the flagpole ordinance.
Sure.
So I'd make a motion to table this until the March 21st meeting.
I'll second that.
Any discussion, Ms. Strong?
I would rather just vote it down now or take a vote on your original motion. And then if the county wants to come back with more discussions, that would be up to them to decide to do. But I don't see what information we're waiting on.
Well, I would say that a couple people express interest in seeing if the IDA would pay for it. I think that's worth, looking into. I also think, if anybody else wants to come and speak to it, we just give them a chance to do it. And then I'll withdraw my motion if there's not enough support on the 21st.
Well, I've seconded
Already
it.
seconded.
The IDA,
Well, not that motion, the original, but well, okay.
Mr. Lewis's previous presentation to us said there's a chance that 100% of the airport construction would be covered. If you remember that, he said. But I'm fine with seconding
The
it coming
table
back.
motion,
Yes, because one thing about the IDA funds, where they come from some of our partners that have submitted letters saying that they're in support of this. Those are not general fund dollars. So I'd be fine with that if we could take the temperature of our IDA.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Motion is table the March 21st resolution. Yes, sir. Oh, with
To table the request until the 21st. Is that clear? The request is, unless the county changes it, will come back in the current form. And we'll ask staff to take the temperature of IDA, if I'm understanding. Not part of the motion, but just direction for staff. Any last questions?
the only question I would have is if it does come back to us, the one clause about the initiative and cost share. That's the one thing that I have a concern with in this resolution.
Right.
So if it were to come back to us, we were to vote on it, I just would only want to commit to the feasibility study. So that's what make that clear.
And I would suggest if the county's listening, or the message will certainly be relayed through our administrator, that where council stands on that. I'd ask for a roll call vote. Ms. Strawn,
Nay.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mr. Alligood,
Hey,
Mr. Smith. Can't get a tie.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
I think that is 3 approve and 2 nay. Motion carries to table the topic till March 21st. And Mike, thank you for your guidance and support as we muddle through. Next item is 15.2, discussion and consideration of a resolution establishing revitalization area. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In front of City Council is a resolution to Virginia Housing, which was requested by Mr. Edwin Gaskin, so he could so he could consider going to Virginia Housing for a loan. And this particular loan, for a pre-development loan, requires that the property that is in question be in a revitalization area. It only frees up the opportunity for Mr. Gaskin or any other developer, if you will, of the property, even perhaps ourselves, if we were developing housing, to go to Virginia Housing and qualify for this particular loan program. There's no other requirement from the city to provide any kind of financial support or support otherwise. It does not require City Council to approve of a project in the future. It just allows anyone who wants to use that land for housing to explore and use the potential program offered by Virginia Housing to finance a housing program. So that's what this request does. It asks, it says that you would put it in a revitalization area for that purpose.
And
So I do recommend that as a tool available to, again, anyone to develop the property for housing, that it be approved so that sometime in the future, whether it's Mr. Gaskin or not, that door is open so somebody feels advantageous to walk through it, and should City Council then want to approve such a development. Of course, you've already approved the development, but today the request is just, should it be a revitalization area?
Stated another way, anybody looking to develop this property would have access to Virginia Housing lending options.
And
with
if they,
this.
sorry. And if they use Virginia Housing for their lending, it'll most likely include some kind of rent subsidy, affordable housing, workforce housing component to it.
That is the case today. I couldn't tell you 2 years from now
Yeah,
what'll
right.
happen, but today that's the, if you will, the requirement. Yes, there's got to be some affordability requirements so that in this particular case, 80% of the AMI be the requirement, 80% or less.
And so just to clarify, I mean, this is a resolution, which then makes it so if it's passed. But since it deals with land use, is there no proper way of advertising it? Because it takes a piece of property in the city of Lexington and puts a new label on it that means certain things that could impact the neighborhood, impact the neighbors. I'm just wondering if there's any transparency to that. Probably not, but I wanted to state it because someone might come after the fact and be like, wow, you did that without telling me, and it put XYZ in motion, and I didn't have an opportunity to speak publicly about it, and it impacts me as a neighbor or as a taxpayer in the city of Lexington. I just bring that up.
I appreciate that. I mean, clearly this is for housing only. And there's been a project approved there for housing, and housing is a permitted use. So I don't know that legally there's any requirement. You might feel that you'd like from standpoint of transparency to have more public input. But I can yield to our attorney as well, see if he's got any input.
No, so there is no legal requirement that you advertise this, but as Mr. Hallis says, you may decide that you would like to. You always have the option to do so. There are certain further actions which, depending upon which financing program it is that this developer ultimately went with, Virginia Housing might require further actions, which might require public hearings, but just to make this baseline designation has no legal requirement for further advertisement.
And I would also inquire, to be clear, it has zero impact on the zoning. Our zoning is our zoning. So from that standpoint.
Yeah, and I get all that. I kind of knew the answer. It just felt like we're putting a label on something and someone might take it a certain way.
Sure.
And I don't like to do things that people are not informed about. That's all.
Absolutely.
One part of this communication from Luke Tate indicates that none of these apply, that is being a Virginia enterprise zone. Where does our Virginia enterprise zone boundary exist?
We do not have an enterprise zone. We have an opportunity zone. which
Opportunity
is a
zone. Okay.
Federal zone.
That's,
It was confusing for me too.
that's where I got it mixed up. Thank you.
Right there with you, Mr. Smith. I thought we had an enterprise zone and we would be good to go, but opportunity, got zones all over the place. Very good. Any further questions for the city manager? If not, I would ask for city council's consideration.
Make a motion that we approve resolution 2024-02.
Second.
Have a motion, a second, any discussion? Hearing none, we ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. The next item on our agenda is a closed meeting. And before Councilmember Strawn reads us into our closed meeting, I want to thank the journalism class for being here. Again, remind you, if you have any questions, council members are available and feel free to contact us. And wanted to pause. I don't know if Jenny is at home watching, but if she is, want to wish her a happy birthday from the mayor and full council, and hope that her 5th birthday is extra special, as well as Mr. Ziegler. Happy birthday. With that, Ms. Strawn, if you'll read us in.
I move that the City Council of the City of Lexington convene in closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3 for the purpose of discussing and considering the disposition of publicly held real property at 626 Waddell Street and Spotswood Drive.
Second.
Right, well, I'm not done yet. Where discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the city's bargaining position or negotiating strategy, and Virginia Code 2.2-3711A29 for the purpose of discussing and considering the award of an amended public contract with Urban Core Realty LLC and Echelon Resources, Inc. pertaining to 626 Waddell Street in Spotswood Drive, where the contract amendment will involve the expenditure of public funds, and discussion in an open session would adversely affect the city's bargaining position or negotiating strategy.
Second.
Thank you, Nick. And roll call vote. You don't vote, do you, Frank?
Yes.
You do, okay. Frank Friedman,
Aye.
Charles Alligood.
Aye.
Nick Betts.
Aye.
David Ziegler.
Aye.
Chuck Smith,
Aye.
and I vote aye.